Hi, everyone. On Tuesday morning, October 13th, I received the heartbreaking news that Tracy Forrest had flown west. Needless to say, the entire aviation community was and still is in shock. After all, Tracy was a passionate aviator who had an ATP rating just because, who built literally from the ground up a successful construction business, who was a founding member of the Citation Jet Pilots Association, as well as a co-founder of the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation. He was a generous philanthropist and a great humanitarian who supported a lot of causes, particularly those that were aviation related, and even more so when influencing the aviation career paths of aspiring young aviators. That dovetailed perfectly with his friendship with R.A. Bob Hoover, who was always about inspiring the next generation of aviation leaders. There is so much to be said about Tracy, and given our current circumstances, the best way to do so is with this virtual fireside chat that took place on Friday, October 16th. You will hear from some of Tracy's closest friends and admirers, including such aviation legends as Tom Poberezny, Bob Wilson, and Clay Lacy, to name a few. Heck, we probably could have done a 2-hour show with the likes of aviators like Fred Telling, Bob Showalter, and Terry Poyen. Most importantly, though, before we get started, I would be remiss not to acknowledge Ray. Simply put, Ray was Tracy's center of gravity. And along with Lisa Harris, his executive assistant, they always managed to keep Tracy on course. Well, it's time for departure from the southeast ramp of Orlando Sanford International Airport, runway 27 right, cleared for takeoff, call sign, nice. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of All Things Aviation. Today, we're going to do a tribute to Tracy Forrest. And it is my honor, and I consider it a privilege to have some of Tracy's longtime friends, colleagues on this fireside chat, this virtual fireside chat. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the chairman of the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation, Mike Herman. Mike?
Thanks, Vince. What I want to say to everybody is we all know that he, as opposed to his normal appearance in public, he was a very private person. And in keeping with that, I would just like to say this. I've seen the real Tracy Forrest. I've seen him do things for folks that folks do not see. He's never talks about it. He never brings it up. I've watched him on a one-to-one basis with other people and how he listens, how he cares. And personally with me and the things that we have tried to do, not always successfully all the time, but that we have tried to do, in particular to fulfill Bob Hoover's wishes. He was a very, very caring guy. And a lot of people didn't get to see that side of him. And so I feel like I was very privileged to be able to know the real Tracy, the things he did for folks, whether it was during the holiday times or other times. He was always there, and he always very quietly in private did what he did and the way he did it. And for that, he's one of the nicest human beings I've ever known.
One thing for sure is Tracy would be enjoying this right now. Seeing everybody, all of his friends get together. That was one of his favorite things to do, was to pull friends together and catch up and chat and fly.
Well, I'm sure he's watching. So I'm going to let some of the other folks get their piece in. I just wanted to get that point across that he touched us all everywhere, and nobody ever else knew about it, because that was Tracy. That was really the private Tracy.
I think that's a good time to turn it over to Cyrus.
Hi, Ed.
Welcome, Ed, Mark, Chick.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Good
Cyrus,
to see
you want to share some of your thoughts about Tracy? You've known him a long time.
Yeah, I prepared some thoughts and
just starting to listen to Mike talk, like my heart kind of started to race, just thinking about Tracy in the context that we've all known him. And Tracy was one of the most important people in my life. He has been, and will continue to be an incredible mentor for me. I would argue that the company that I co-founded, Jetta Viva, probably wouldn't have ever really happened if it wasn't for Tracy. Tracy kind of took me underneath his very big wing, pulled me over about 11, 12 years ago, and started to teach me what it means to bring people together and build community and watch and get joy from the joy of others. And I've never met anyone that was so gracious with their time, with their resources, with their friends. The number of times something would just show up in the mail from Tracy that was, I don't know how he thought about it, but he's like, hey, I think you'd enjoy this. And, you kind of have to like go, who does this? And not a lot of people do that. And Tracy did it. And so to have him as a mentor and really one of my best friends for the last decade plus has been one of the highlights of my life. And I can't be more grateful. And many of you I met because of Tracy. And it was Tracy that was really the horsepower amongst a few other folks around CJP, which is a community that has had a huge impact on me personally and thousands of individuals. And frankly, it's why I met Bob. It's probably why I met Mike, Mark. I mean, all you guys. It's because of Tracy I met you. Cheryl, Vince. And, I don't think we're gifted with that many people that are able to have a little drop of their effort create such incredible waves of impact for a community. And I as I go forward in my life as somebody who looked up to him, not only as a friend, but as a mentor, I'm really excited to be able to just take a few of his lessons and hopefully have them impart going forward. But a couple things that stood out thinking about Tracy is the man was a 4-year-old child stuck in a 70-year-old man's body. and holy crap, I mean, it couldn't be more playful soul. And one of my all-time favorite quotes is, you don't stop playing because you grow old because you stop playing. And while Mother Time may have had its impact on Tracy, it had no impact on the physicality of Tracy, it had no impact on the man's spirit, all the way to the moment we, all of us had the chance to say our last words with him. And the last words I said to him is, I love you. And he said that back. And
Good on you.
And but that being said, a few meaningful things. I get to go hop in an airplane and go fly right now, and Tracy's going to be my co-pilot when I go do that, and I'm really excited to go spend time with him up there where he is now.
You're going to make it tough on the rest of us. I'm crying right now. Gee,
Yeah.
cut it out, buddy.
We all have boxes of tissue thanks to you, Cyrus.
Well, I'm sorry, man, but I'm a crybaby. Boo-hoo was my call sign in high school. They used to say he used to cry a lot, so they call me Boo. But just something that just shows an indication of how much love this man has for him and for Ray, who's been just such an incredible human that we've all gotten to know because of Tracy. And really, none of this would have happened without Ray as well. And I hope she's able to enjoy and celebrate this incredible human being that she got to have a partnership with for so long. But, having been close friends with him, I've had a lot of friends reach out and say, hey, Cyrus, Tracy has had a huge impact on me. How do I help? What do I do? What's the right way to kind of get going and, celebrating his life going forward? And I am, with the help of a few other folks, we, had a conversation with Ray earlier today around, hey, Ray, what would you like us to do? And between myself, Ed Turley, another friend, John Callahan, she said, hey, I'd like for you guys to kind of aggregate and put people together and try to come up with a place where anything that's raised in his name, can be done in a really thoughtful way. And I am so humbled to be a part of sharing that within 2-3 hours, we've had $500,000 committed to support whatever Tracy wants, his soul wants to support going forward. And for any of our friends that are watching this that have known Tracy and that are interested in supporting whatever it is we go forward in doing in Tracy's name, you can email me at cs@jetaviva.com. That's cs@jetaviva.com. And, you know, I'm sure Ray, Tracy, and all those that downstream get to benefit from your generosity and helping celebrate Tracy would be very much appreciated. So I don't want to hog up all the time here, but thank you, Vince, and the rest of the team for joining on here for us to celebrate one of the most special guys that's ever walked this planet. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our good friend, Bob Wilson, who we met through Tracy. So over to you, Bob.
Okay, thank you very much. You two guys are hard to follow, but I'll add a little bit to it. I probably have known Tracy longer than anybody here, especially in his aviation career. As Tracy came to work down in 1982 for my father, worked as a plumber, if you can believe that. But he had such a great work ethic. He came to my father and said, look, I'd like to sub out all of the villas, you know, to build the villas for you at Orange Lake Country Club down there, our timeshare at Orlando. This is where we really got together, and I got to know Tracy there. We were in a meeting. By the way, one other thing that was interesting is Ray was my dad's secretary, and that's how Tracy met Ray. Was it?
The small world of aviation.
I did not know that one.
I did not either.
I did too.
So we were sitting there, you know, really having a talk one day. Tracy said, I gotta leave.
Mike.
We said, what do you mean you gotta leave? He said, I've got to go get my boat over in the Bahamas. And I said, Tracy, how are you going to get there? He said, I got to catch an airline. I basically told him, I said, look, you're crazy. You need to learn how to fly. And he said, oh, that's for somebody else, not me. Tracy had a captain's license for maritime and did a lot on about a 59-foot sailboat, I believe he had. So about 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I get a call from Tracy. He says, what the hell do I have to do to learn how to fly? And so I laid out a deal and said, one thing you got to do, you're not going to want to do, is you got to fly every day and just let your brother Jeff run the company. And he said, can't do that. I said, well, you're probably not going to learn how to fly then. And finally, he bit the bullet and went, got his license, took the time off to do it. I got his license. Next thing I know, hell, he's bought a damn Piper. And I said, so you got a Piper? Well, he got in the old Piper program where they would trade up. If you wanted to trade from whatever the Warrior to the Saratoga and on up. So next thing I knew, he had already traded up. And of course, Tracy loved gadgets, as everybody knows. Everything electronic was Tracy. He had more crap in those damn airplanes. And I asked him, what's your useful load? He said, what's that? I said, someday you got to start thinking about it, Tracy, because if you're going to haul anybody. Next, I find out he's got a TBM 700. So he calls me and he said, we're going to pick you up in the TBM 700. I said, okay, I'd never been in one before. You know, he landed in his, and the way I describe it is it had that chameleon paint job. Sucker changes colors every time it goes by you. And we took off. We had a French guy that was flying with him at that time. We go up to Jackson, Tennessee, and we're coming in there, and you know, we called in. The French guys called the cicada, and the tower said, "What's a cicada?" I don't know what it is. And so he's trying to explain it. And of course, I smarted off and said, it's a baby platypus. And this guy about got bent out of shape. Tracy's laughing back seat.
They love that.
The tower operator, she ended up and said, well, what's so dang funny about it? I said, well, just tell me what color we are when we go by. So I shouted touch and go. And now she calls back. She said, or I called her and she said, I don't know, but I saw 3 when you went by. So, it was interesting. Now from that, I go where they had the NBAA down in Orlando, probably back in '96 or so. And he comes over to me and he says, if I will buy a Mustang position, he'll buy a Mustang position. I said, Tracy, I don't need a Mustang. I already got a CJ. He says, you need to buy one and then I'll buy one, but you'll make me do it. So I said, all right. We bought a position, never expecting to, to close on it or anything. And then of course he goes for like number 13 or so. And I'm the other end of the stream. I wanted to be a lot later and let them, fly the aircraft out and do it. So, just friendship with Tracy and Ray been just unbelievable. We had, he did one thing that was, I think, really nice. And Mike Herman's on here. And that is I think between Tracy and Mike, they got me honored with the San Diego Air and Space. It was absolutely a fantastic deal for me. I think he was proud of it. Just, it really worked out nifty.
That's awesome.
The tough thing, it's hard to end up, but I got a call from Ray about Tracy, and he was diagnosed on my birthday, August 17th, which was, man, really became a sad day for me. But fortunately, I flew in to see him, first week of September, and just told Ray, I said, you tell me when I can come and I'll be there. So we ended up flying in. We pull up his, his hangar, which is absolutely, there's no hangar that compares to his hangar.
None.
If you haven't seen it, you're missing the most unbelievable place to ever go. And so Tracy is sitting in a car, and we go over and we talk, and basically he was, he had everything up top. He was, current with everything. He was just kind of struggling with his right side due to the tumor that was on the left side that had been operated on. But we had absolutely a fantastic time. Went to this famous German restaurant that he loved to eat at down there, and he finished his plate. I'm not the biggest German fan of how you eat, but it was more fun. And then he took me down to show me his new houseboat that he had just finished. And I think this was like probably less than 6 months prior. But
wow.
It was, for me, it was so special to spend some time with him. He talked about going into a research project that they were going to do, with his cancer that he had. I heard from Ray that it was called a wild cancer, and I'd never heard the term wild. So doing that, I called my brother-in-law, who's an oncologist, and he said, really, that's a definition of a cancer that's super fast growing, and they really don't know how to handle it. And it was tough for me to see Tracy in that position, but I was able, we sat, we talked, really just had a good time. And he's really going to be missed by me. And I wrote a little note to Ray, and I said, Tracy's now flying out of, in the clear above all the clouds. He won't have to worry about flying another IFR flight.
Yeah.
But just probably one of the greatest people that you'll ever meet. And, he's done so much for aviation. It's hard to imagine. But that's my kind of story
Well,
with
thank-
him on the
Yeah.
super guys. And I'll turn it
Well
over
said,
to
Bob.
Mark.
Well said. Thank you, Bob, for sharing that. I also want to welcome Tom Poporesny and Clay Lacey, who have joined the call.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Tom. Hi, Clay.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, let's go ahead and chat with Mark Delude, who had some stories and things he wanted to share too. Bob, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, it's really striking to me to hear everybody's thoughts on Tracy because he was such a consistent guy, just, you know, genuine, just as charming guy, bit of a, at times he could be almost a curmudgeon, but just everybody, how consistent it was. And Bob's story of how recounting these progression of airplanes was making me think, I've had a lot of people follow me in my various airplanes, but it's actually me that's been following Tracy this whole time. I met Tracy when I had a TBM, when he had a TBM. He bought a Mustang, I bought a Mustang, he bought an M2, I bought an M2, he bought a CJ3 Plus, I bought a CJ3 Plus. I kept waiting to see what Tracy was going to buy next because pretty clearly I was going to buy whatever the heck he was going and buying. And it was just, you know, every time he had an airplane, he would just be so positive about it and just talking about how great all of it was, always so positive and upbeat and so on. And yet he had that childlike, you know, side of it that Cyrus mentioned as well, you know, the 4-year-old in a 70-year-old body. And I remember on either the TBM or the Mustang that he had this little placard as soon as you came in the airplane. And it said, if you're not living beyond your means, you're not using your imagination. And it just really described him as I just want to live every single moment that I possibly can, you know, do everything that my time on this planet is going to let me do. Just a love of life and sharing it with people too. If I look at all the names here on this screen, these are like aviation giants to me. And I met these people, a lot of it through Tracy, met Bob Hoover through Tracy. Unbelievable guy, you know, just for every single step. But that's not to say for 1 second that he couldn't be a hard ass too, because you know, you couldn't say no to Tracy. He called me up at one point. I had bought my Mustang. I had joined CJP. And he calls me up. He says, Mark, we've got a problem. You're familiar with this high-tech stuff. I need you to come out and tell me if we're on the right path or what we should do. So I went and I did that because you can't say no to Tracy. And, you know, I flew out to Spokane, Washington to look at what I live on the East Coast because Tracy told me that I had to go and do this. So I go and I take a look and I give him a whole report on everything that needs to be done. And he goes, okay, so you're going to join us and you're going to do all of this, right? And I'm saying, well, like, why would I do that? In my mind, I'm thinking, why would I do that? But my mouth was saying, yeah, I'd love to, Tracy. Of course I will do that. He just had this way. You just wanted to be around him. You couldn't tell him no. And even if you tried, he didn't hear the word no ever. It was just for him, it was, oh, I don't know what that meant, but okay, let's get back to the real thing here of what I want you to do. He was like an extraordinary guy. And, you know, kind of like every step, this childish aspect of it as well. You know, Vince is standing there in front of his airplane that got that call sign. And just before this call went live for everybody, it reminded me is Tracy worked forever to get that short tail number, you know, that looks like the word nice. And I think within minutes of him getting it and having the schematic of it, he texted me this picture and he was just overjoyed like a kid would be at Christmas that he had just gotten this toy that he had wanted, you know, he'd been asking his parents for. Just, you know, nobody has lived their life more fully than Tracy. And it's just a fantastic guy and glad I knew him.
That is so well said, Mark. And, you know, as you talk about CJP, the Citation Jet Pilots Association, that's kind of appropriate to let Cheryl chime in here, talking about citations and the association. And Cheryl, you knew Tracy for a long time.
Indeed. And to chime in on what Mark's telling you and what Cyrus has said and what Michael has said. So I remember those conversations with Mark because Tracy said to me one day, this Mark Delude, I've got to get him involved. I remember I was on the front end of all those conversations. And then he got Mark reeled in, started getting in. Then I remember the conversation down in the kitchen one day when you were here at the ramp. And he said, Cheryl, come down here, come down here. So I come down and we're chatting in the kitchen and Mark's coming on board to do this. It was as emphatic, you were gonna do it. And you were just standing there going, okay.
And he pulled me in, and as you know, I ended up being pretty involved with CJP. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So on Tracy's generosity front, Michael, I'll touch on what you said because Tracy did me exactly the way you had described, which was remarkable. So my husband and I have flown for years, and so we were in the aviation industry for quite some time, and we were at all the major aviation events for years and years and years and years. We came to know Tracy. We came to know Tracy here because we did flight training on the field here, and so we were at a lot of events. So Tracy had invited us to one of his MBA events many years ago, and then from that point on, and at one MBA event at his hangar, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, come here, I need you, I need you, I need you. So when Tracy taps you on the shoulder, says, I need you, you just turn and you go, right? You don't ask questions, you just go. So I did, and he turned me around in the hallway in front of the workshop downstairs. And he said, okay, look up there. And I looked up, I'm looking up the stairway. I had never been up there. And he said, that is your new office. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, that's your new office for your business. And CJP is going to book you up there. I said, okay. And I turned around, I look again, and he was gone. So Michael, what you're saying is exactly true. You're lucky if you get to say thank you, because he drops those beautiful blossoms on you and then turns and he's just happy to be able to do something like that for somebody, right? So from that point on, and my story starts before that, because many years my path had crossed Tracy's at aviation events. And so we knew each other, but we didn't know each other well. I mean, we just, knew each other because we were always at events. So we maybe chat lightly here and there. And one day he actually asked me what I did for a living. And so we had a very nice conversation. He said, well, this is what I do. I'm in the association management business. We managed like 9 associations at that time and so on and so forth. And all he said was, I've got some people you need to talk to. And this was back in 2010, I think. So the next week he had me on the phone with the CJP board of directors at that time. And then some of them flew out here to Florida, and all of a sudden we were having meetings and we were talking and chatting. And I thought, well, it's a startup organization, which I would consider a startup in 2010, because they were founded in 2008 and 2009 was really their first year. So they were in their infancy. So we had some really great dialogue, and by getting into the conversation, they were intrigued because they were talking about the organization, and then I was telling them what their problems were. And they were looking at me going, oh my gosh, that's exactly the problem we're having. How do we fix it? And that's what I do for a living, right? So that's how I came on board. And before you know it, they brought me on part-time and said, we need you to start, looking at things and getting things organized. And we need the accounting taken away from here, and we need to do this, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't but literally a few months later before they asked me to go full-time. And then the next year they asked me to drop my client load and concentrate on the efforts of CJP. So I'm very fortunate. I've met so many great people. CJP guys and ladies are just absolutely phenomenal. So the other side of that coin is the prankster side of Tracy. So
there you go. I was going to ask you what a Tracyism would be.
yes. So Tracy found me an easy mark because, as I said, whenever he said, come here, I need you, you just go, right? So he just leads you right into the fire, so to speak. So one day I was in the kitchen downstairs and having a conversation with one of his guests, And then he calls me out the door into the hangar. And he was standing there with this contraption in his hands. And I'm going, okay, what? And his Jeep is literally parked 8 feet from us to the left, right? The nose of the Jeep. The tail of his M2 is just overhead. I mean, we're right in there. And all of a sudden he lights up this flamethrower and it shoots a flame over the hood of the Jeep, under the tail of the M2. I'm terrified because I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to blow up. But he's got this flamethrower that if you all seen him at Oshkosh, he loves to play with, right? He's got it downstairs. It's on a little stand from Elon Musk. So he was showing off, but he was going to really scare the heck out of me. And he sure did.
There's a picture of him roasting marshmallows with that, with Ray.
There you go. There you go. I mean,
with the
like,
flamethrower.
my bangs and my eyelashes and eyebrows were singed. You know, it's one of those moments. It was crazy. But, oh, he just thought that was hysterical. He just loved it. Absolutely thought that was hysterical.
Hey, we've had a few people on that I want to give a chance, especially
Please.
Clay and Tom. Clay Lacey, how are you?
Good.
Good. Clay, you want to share some of your memories of Tracy?
Well, yes, I'd like to say a few things about Tracy, but I didn't know Tracy very long. I don't remember when we met, but probably not over 6 years ago. I think maybe through Bob Hoover. I'm not sure, but anyway, I had the privilege of, when I was down at the NBA in Florida, being invited down to his hangar and his get-together, which is just great. But my impression of Tracy was he loved aviation, and he, as you know, you've been talking about, he moved from one airplane to another in a big hurry, and kept moving his way up in aviation, but also he loved aviation, loved people in aviation, and he did a lot for us in aviation, making it look good, let's say, and having fun. And but he was a very great guy. I can't remember him ever talking bad about anyone, running other people down. And he'd fly his airplane out here to California on different occasions, several times. And I had the opportunity to get together with him. He was just a great guy. And so you're still going to be missed, and by all of you and me, all of his friends, really missed. That aviation's going to miss him, and life will miss him. He was a positive person.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Clay. We all couldn't agree with you more on that. Tom, you've been waiting patiently. We'd love to hear what you have to say about your friendship with Tracy and all the things he did with you with the EAA.
Thanks, Vince. I appreciate it. I'm here with my wife, Sharon, and my daughter, Leslie. And we want to remember Tracy because he is an important part of our lives and your lives. He didn't just love airplanes. He loved people. He loved to do things for people no matter what it was. But he's also a guy that liked to have fun. And at Oshkosh, I can remember the sofa that he motorized and drove around the grounds, the flamingos that he had at his campsite, and his outreach. There's nobody that he wouldn't talk to that loved airplanes. He, for me, I could tell stories like we all can that will create memories that'll last a lifetime. But most importantly is the relationship that we had and the friendship. He made you feel important, whether he knew you for 1 day, 1 year, or whatever the case may be. He was active, led by his example. And by example today, look at all the people on the phone here that are ready to tell stories about Tracy Forrest. I was shocked when I heard about his having cancer and finally passing away. goes to show how fragile life is, but also in life we make relationships that become very important, help to shape our personalities and what we do. It I'm almost at a loss for words, which is pretty unusual for me, but
Tom, what's one of your fondest memories of Tracy?
I think one of my fondest memories of Tracy was at the CJP conventions. He was always working behind the scenes, never looking for credit, but always getting things done with everybody in the leadership role. He is an important part of CJP, he's an important part of aviation, and he loved to fly. When I was with him in the airplane, we'd fly different places. You could just see by his natural ability how important that was. But what was also important is the fact is that he cares. And when you meet people like that, it tugs at your heart. He was a tremendous loss, but his memory will carry on forever. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today to share briefly how important Tracy is to me, because the emotion that I feel in my body right now is hard to push out of me. But I want you to know that I think this is wonderful that you guys are doing this, to put this together, because he has earned this opportunity to be remembered one more time as he's gone west. Thanks, Vince.
Sure. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, it's tough these days, and you have to do everything virtually, but it is also great to be able to bring everybody together for this. So I want to shift a little bit about something with Tracy that I always admired about him. So I met him about 12 years ago when I worked for AOPA's Air Safety Foundation. And when I first met Tracy and sat down and talked with him, the very first thing I learned about him was that he was extremely passionate about advocating for aviation, for general aviation, and very knowledgeable about it, which is going to bring me to Mark Baker and Ed Boland. I mean, there wasn't anything that Tracy wasn't on top of with regard to the needs of keeping general aviation safe and alive and thriving and that type of thing. And with that, I'm just going to give it to either Ed or Mark, and you guys take it away.
I'll take a shot at that. Thanks, Vince, and thanks all. Nice to see you and so many people that I haven't seen this year, this season of non-fly-ins. And but then when I look at that Ed number, there's probably nobody happier than that Ed number other than Tracy than me, because I travel over the country, and every time I'd see a Tango Fox on the ramp with a funny paint scheme, I'd say, "Where are you?" Well, I sold that airplane, and then you go on and on and on and on. I could never find out which airplane he was actually in because it changed over so fast. I just quit calling. But he was sensational about that, and I think his hangar there, I get to see a lot of hangars all over the country and the world, and that toy box wins. And his ability to share that toy box is all about who Tracy was that I know, and some of us here, like Bob and I and Mike and others, got to spend a fair amount of time with him, and some of us even went on the Ronald Reagan together a dozen or so years ago. Spending time with him was always a hoot, always fun, but he always chose to share passion for aviation and share his heart, share his home, what I consider his home, the hangar. And thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing yourself. God bless.
Amen.
Thank you, Mark. Ed?
Yeah, it's just everybody is telling stories and they all bring Tracy to life because he lived so large, I think, for all of us. I had a chance to get to meet Tracy when he was the head of the TBM Owners and Pilots Association, and was thoroughly impressed with everything that he accomplished. And then the next thing I know, he's buying a Mustang and talking about starting a brand new owner-operator group. And what really impressed me is he had done that once, and he created something really special. And here he was with the new airplane ready to do it all over again. And he did. And I think anyone who knows or has been in any way associated with CJP recognizes that he has done something really special and brought so many people and lives together through both of those organizations, but also because he brought people together. And people have talked about NBAA. You can't go to NBA in Orlando without celebrating in that magnificent hangar. But everywhere people gathered, Tracy was always there. And a lot of times they were aviation events that celebrated our industry, celebrated each other. a lot of times they were about building our industry. And sometimes they were just about hard work. And I remember showing up for the Citation Special Olympics in Lincoln, Nebraska, and kind of looking around, and they're Tracy and Ray, and they're just ready to welcome people, lift luggage, do whatever it needed. And they were so excited and so passionate. You know, it's one thing to show up at fancy events and see fancy people. Another to show up at Special Olympics, fly people, lift luggage, and just help out. And I think that's what I'm going to remember most is he was always there, good times and bad, fancy or not so fancy, whatever it was, he embraced it. He loved it. And his positivity was just something that we all built on. Tracy always asked me what I was doing for fun. That mattered to him, and it permeates everything. So listening to everybody talk, I'm just reminded how blessed we are in aviation to have so many special people. And Tracy is certainly a prime example of what makes the industry so special: the passion and the giving back and the fun. So Vince, thank you for bringing us all together to celebrate a life very well lived.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for participating in it. Rich Pickett, you have spent a lot of time with Tracy, and I saw you smiling about several of the what I call Tracyisms. You want to tell us a little bit some of the stories and memories you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so Cyrus was talking about, he took him under his wing. I mean, if you think of Tracy, he has huge wings. No matter what he was doing. I remember just first meeting him down at his hangar and walking around and seeing all the propellers, right, in the hangar that's in your background. And he would, hundreds of other people around there would go around and explain to me where he got those propellers, which are quite impressive. And then we spent a lot of time together, spent a lot of time at conventions and events and helping Bob Hoover a lot. And then I think about it, as we're talking about, I was thinking on his sofa and the sofa card at Oshkosh and the memories of being there. But he and Ray and Jeff, everybody worked so hard to put all those events together. And like you said, the hospitality of Tracy was really unmatched. I mean, anybody was welcome to come by the events. He helped people, he introduced people. He helped people in such a generous way, whether it was from the trailers to the dinners to the sofa. I was looking for a video I have of my son and I on that sofa, and just brought back nice thoughts. And then we talked this summer after I had COVID and so forth. That was before he got sick. And the last time that I had seen Tracy, he had just gotten the nice November 1 Charlie Echo. And he was actually in San Diego. I'm like, God, that looks like Tracy's paint job, but what's the deal with that? You know, and there was Tracy. So he was so proud of getting that number after all those years of waiting for it. And just all the memories, just amazing. Watching him with his car with the flamethrower out the back outside of his hangar and the events. And he had such a positive impact on so many people. I only knew him from the aviation aspect. Not the other walks of his construction and so forth, but he was just an amazing guy, and I'm sure he'd be extremely happy that this is how we celebrated him.
Well, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So, Chick, I hear you have some stories you can't tell us, and then some that you can. Take your choice.
Very true. I met Tracy in 1998 when I moved back to Orlando area. And he, like Mark mentioned, he got me involved in a Mustang. I had my partner, my business partner, and I had a 650 Citation and a Turbo Commander. And my business partner became ambassador to Luxembourg and told me, he said, I don't need an airplane anymore. So I said, well, we'll sell both of them and I'll buy another airplane. And so I was telling one of the guys that flew with me from time to time, I said, you know, I think I'm going to get a Mustang. I said, I've flown with Tracy twice. And I said, I really like the airplane. I said, I don't think Lisa, who's my wife, I don't think Lisa's going to like that. She wants something bigger than that. I said, look, Lisa could fill up a 737, but I'm not going to buy one. And so I bought the airplane, and then Tracy helped me out with an issue that happened at the pre-buy, and got me with a consultant who turned it around and made the Citation Center pay for a problem with an engine start and a pretty expensive bill that they refused to. And this guy developed the graphs and the dates that I had the problem, and Citation Center in Greensboro said, well, we're going to pay for this. We didn't realize that we hot started your engine during your pre-buy. And Tracy's been my landlord for 15 years now. I've got 2 hangars at the taxiway right across from Tracy's. And so I would see him quite often. And we flew together several times. 8 of us bought the Citation 10 at the CJP auction. We tried to buy that 4 years in a row and finally bought it. And so we took off and traveled around the country and had a wonderful time. Ate at some of the best places you'd ever want to meet. And I saw Tracy about a week and a half ago. We'd been talking with Ray about trying to do something for him. And she said, look, why don't we all meet out at Tracy's hangar? Everybody bring their lunch and we'll sit down and you can spend some time with him. And so we did. And that was Sunday before last. And I mean, you could see the effect the surgery and the illness had on him, but he was still able to communicate and still was Tracy. And after we had lunch, we talked a little bit. Ray leaned over and spoke to him, and she said, he's ready to go. And, you know, he never would stay still. The nurse's aide wheeled him out in like a walker with a seat on it as he's running his feet, helping her move. And I mean, I've got so many stories about Tracy, and he got me involved in CJP. Kind of like Mark, I miss them too. I went from the Mustang to CJ3, and he got me involved with EAA, with Tom and those guys, and he was just a wonderful ambassador for aviation. And Cheryl and Tracy and I go over every year, and I've been doing it with them for 8 years now to Embry-Riddle to select students, both at Daytona and Prescott, for the scholarships. And I remember one time, and I'm sure Mike Herman does too, that we had figured out 4 people we were going to give the scholarships to, and there was one young lady that seemed sharp and needed help. And Tracy, after she left, Tracy said, how about you and I'll get Mike Herman and we'll pitch in $5,000 each and give it to her to help her out, to finish out her education. And we did that. And he was all the time trying to mentor young pilots, help them get their training done, help them get their education finished up. Just a wonderful, giving person.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chick. I see that Randy has joined us. Randy, you want to share some memories with Tracy? Randy, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Unmute. You need to unmute. Hit your unmute and we can hear you. Okay, while we're waiting for Randy, there he goes. Randy?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
It's a new device, and apologies for that. You know, I haven't known Tracy as long as most of the people on the call, but I developed a deep sense of respect and love for him the 7 or 8 years that I knew him. He helped me. I met him very briefly when I was flying a TBM, but never got to know him. And he introduced me to Oshkosh, staying on in the camp there, helped me find my way around long after most of you had been doing that for years. But his generosity just was overwhelming. I felt like family, and I know that's how he made all of us feel. His hospitality at his hangar, again, you know, whether you're there with NBAA or CJP or AOPA. I mean, it just didn't matter. You were part of the inner crowd, and I think he touches lives. He's made me think about how we spend our time and money, and he's gold standard. I'm a better person the short time that I knew him and loved him, and I will miss him sorely. So, but again, not nearly the length of time that most of you have known him, but what a class act.
What's your fondest memory or story of him, Randy?
Yeah, there were many. I mean, I flew with Tracy in his Mustang up front once, and I was in a CJ1 Plus at the time, and I didn't know the Mustang well, but we were flying in and out of grass fields, and I'm thinking, this is nuts. Nobody takes these airplanes in and out of grass fields. But Tracy was so comfortable with it. He was so he knew his airplane very well, and he knew those grass strips very well. But that's just one tiny thing. And then later you get to know him much deeper, and you see the generosity that he offers students. St. Jude's Hospital, certainly the EAA. And I mean, I'm blown away by this giant amongst us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have a couple people that have joined our fireside chat. Rhonda Lawrence, welcome from Boeing Jet.
Thanks. Welcome. Good to see everybody.
Good
Rhonda,
to see you.
you want to say a few things about Tracy?
Sure. So, all of you guys talk about going up and flying with Tracy. So I never became a pilot. I tried, didn't work out very well for me, but been in the industry, as most of you know. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I had the great fortune of meeting Tracy as part of the gathering committee. And what I saw from Tracy was just his abundance of generosity that he constantly gave to the aviation industry, and it was all the time. He was very quiet about it. He was very humble about it. But those of us that worked with him, and I know all of you as well, knew Tracy contributed a lot. And even though I am not a pilot, but I'm in the industry, Tracy never saw me different from anybody else. And so, from that, I just love him. Every time I would see him, I'd hug him, give him a kiss, we'd talk, just cherished all the times that we were able to work together on the committee. And also he always had a generous hand in extending invitation and inviting you to different things, whether it's to his place in Orlando or to his campsite at Oshkosh. I will cherish him dearly.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Lucino, how are you?
Hey, Vince, I'm doing great. And I was here from the beginning. I was having some technical issues, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. I know that you and Tracy have been friends and aviation colleagues. He was heavily involved with Embry-Riddle, as are you and were you. So I thought maybe you want to share a few things about that relationship.
And actually, because Tom was on the call, I have to tell a story when you folks at CJP hired Tom to sort of expand the convention. And at the time, Tom was on my board when I was CEO of JSSI, and Tom's a pretty good salesman. And he sold me a $100,000 sponsorship package for the CJP convention. And I took a little flack with the board because we probably the one engine type we don't do very well in is the Williams engines, which powers most CJs. So, but the point is Tom immediately introduced me to Tracy, and we did a focus group at Oshkosh, and Tracy just just sort of led the thing. He brought people in, and he absolutely went out of his way to make sure that our company we got our money's worth with CJP. And I went out that year myself and I worked the show at Coeur d'Alene. Cheryl, I think you remember that.
Oh, yes.
And that's when I got to know Tracy. And he really, really took care of us. And I think one of the best flights I ever had was nonstop after Bob Hoover's service, Van Nuys to Daytona, late at night, 5 hours and 10 minutes. And I was in the right seat. And both of us made a mad dash for the men's room at Shelter that evening. But I had a chance to fly back from many Wright brothers dinners in Washington, D.C. We attended together and, enjoyed working with them at Embry-Riddle on the scholarships. Just somebody I'll always remember.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. We have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to give everybody a chance to make one, final statement, so to speak, about their feelings about Tracy. For me, he was, somebody that I enjoyed meeting from the very beginning, 12 years ago. And I considered him a very loyal and trusting friend. I mean, he was the type that, I went from AOPA to MBAA, and I said, "Hey, Tracy, I'm over at MBAA now." He's like, "What do you got over there?" And I tell him, and he'd say, "Okay, I'll join that." And he supported, ever since. And he did that at AOPA, and he did it at MBAA. And as you all know, his humanitarian and philanthropy goes far and wide. So I'm just appreciative of having to get to know him. I would like for him to have been around longer. I'll go to you, Cheryl, first. Or actually, go ahead, Cheryl.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was going to go to Mike and then go around the room.
Okay.
A quickie. We talked about the pranks that he would pull, and since we all feel the same way about him, and we all loved him very deeply. At NBAA one year, he bought me a present at the charity for NBAA, which was the turbine blade, the really big, beautiful blade. And then he had my number, and he bought it with my number. In other words, I bought my own present.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
You did.
Oh my God.
He will be in all our hearts and flying along with us for a long, long time, because we all got the same. When I listen to everybody talking, we all got the same thing out of Tracy. He was a real human being, and we'll all feel that way. We all feel that way.
Absolutely. Okay, Cheryl.
Oh, Tracy was a great mentor. He'd love to mentor folks. He'd love to mentor youth. There's one thing that I deeply regret is that I always wanted to do is at least spend one day just shadowing Tracy, because he could do and get so much done in one day than any person or any army I have ever seen. It was absolutely amazing. I did have the privilege of seeing him very briefly for 2 times during his illness. The first time was about a week after his surgery, and he cracked jokes, sat with his laptop in his lap doing work, just like Tracy always did. And we just chatted for a few minutes, and then he moved on to his staff, and he had things to do. He just simply had things to do. So it was great to see him that way. He was, as Chick said, his mind was there throughout that period of time. He was thinking, he was cognizant, and it was just, he was larger than life.
Yeah. Speaking of always working, Tracy used to send me emails from the jet while he was at cruising altitude.
Yes.
I was like, really? You're following up now? So, Chick, you want to say anything else as we start to wrap this up?
Sure. To kind of follow up on what Mike Herman just said, about 10 years ago at the gathering in Oshkosh, we got ready to leave the dinner, and Ray says, "You're going to stop by and pay for your winnings?" I said, "I didn't bid on anything, or I did bid, but I didn't get anything." And she said, "You might want to check." And Tracy did the same thing with me. I bought a polished propeller blade off of a King Air and hooked it up, $1,500, took it home. My wife said, "What are you going to do with that?" I said, "I have no idea. I don't know where I'm going to put it." but he loved playing tricks on people and thoroughly enjoyed life. It was a pleasure to be around. I'll miss him sorely.
Thank you, Chick. Before we finish the around the room, we have Shasta who just joined us. Shasta, are you on the other side of the world?
Hi, Vince. How is everyone? I'm actually in Italy, and my son is asleep in the other room, but I didn't want to miss this event.
Well, how about Tracy was very supportive of your around the world trip and everything that you did. So you got to know him too. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually met Tracy as a student at Embry-Riddle. He was one of the very first people who gave me a scholarship after hearing my story and my plans for the future. And I can't help but to get emotional because my very first Oshkosh was an invitation from Tracy. And he gave me my own trailer. I really felt like a celebrity back, when I was a student at Embry-Riddle. And he just made me feel so comfortable, and he introduced me to pretty much everyone that I know in aviation. And through his support, throughout the years, it's just been so important to me as a pilot and to Dream Soar and all of the impact that we were able to have around the world. So it's really great to celebrate his life here with you all today.
Well, thanks for being with us, and congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you.
Exciting new thing, motherhood, huh?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Hey, look at it this way: an up and coming pilot.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mike.
Shasta, it's so good to see you. And I remember the lunch we had with you and Lou and Tracy and I. Do you remember your ride in the back seat of the Jeep?
Oh my goodness. Yes, how could you possibly forget something like that?
You can never forget riding in any vehicle with Tracy.
No, and one more thing I want to add, which I thought was the coolest thing. I had the opportunity to fly with him from Orlando to Sun and Fun, and once we took off and we started to come inbound to Sun and Fun, we were given a holding pattern. And the next thing I know, Tracy pulls out his cell phone, and within not even 20 seconds, we were cleared to land. And I guess he had texted someone at the tower, and I just thought, wow, like this is the coolest person on earth. It was just the coolest. Every experience with Tracy it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, great. Do I see Greg Herrick?
Yes, indeed you do.
Yeah. Greg, you want to share a few things with us over the shoulder of Mark Baker?
I don't know. All I can say is Tracy was a fantastic guy. I mean, I worked with him on the Young Eagles program. I worked with him on the Bob Hoover thing. He was just a fantastic person and always generous and thoughtful and a great guy to be around. I remember the parties at his hangar down during NBAA, how fantastic that was. And he pulled out all the stops for his friends, and just a fantastic person. It's just a summation of all the good things that happened with him that kind of flow through my mind, and those are some of them.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you, Greg.
Good to see you.
Did you have any closing comments? You've been sitting there patiently listening to all the great stories.
Well, my closing comment would be that Tracy was a great guy, as all of us know and respect him. Today and doing this video, I wish him a happy flight from here on. He's a great guy.
Thank you very much. Rich, last but not least.
Yeah, I was just thinking about a couple of years ago when Tracy got the 3+, and he said, "Hey, you want to fly to Tahiti?" I said, "Sure." So I hope he's making that flight now.
Thank you. And I said last but not least, almost forgot Mark and Ed. Mark and Ed, you want to close out, please?
Well, I'll be thinking about Tracy every day. And on my desk, he gave me a yoke for a Beech 18 because it's one of my favorite airplanes I've owned. And he grabbed it off his desk one day, gave it to me, and said, "You keep this. It's sitting on my desk." He is a guy that I think we all have to step up our game now to see what we can do to live in those footsteps. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Ed?
Well, I'm going to follow up exactly with what Mark Baker said. Mark and I actually had a chance to have dinner together last night, and we talked about Tracy and the glue that he has been providing for our industry, and the challenge and responsibility we have to make sure that without Tracy here to bring us together, we find ways to make sure we're all bringing each other together, because certainly we all are blessed by the legacy of the friendships that he helped us find and create. And I think the best way we can honor him is to strengthen our friendships and bring more people into our community so that we continue to celebrate all things aviation and all things people.
Amen.
Very well said, and thank you for working the name of the initiative in there. Listen, this has been terrific. I really appreciate everybody that came on board, and we had a few that we added last minute as the list was growing, but great stories from everybody, and really great to just talk about how great of a guy Tracy was, how great of an aviator, how fun it was to be and hang around with him and that type of thing. And he would have, I think, been right in the middle of this if he were.
Vince, you've disappeared. But I just want to say to everybody, let's keep Ray in our prayers and our thoughts, and give her strength.
Thank you. Did I disappear?
Yes, sir.
Your voice did.
Sound
my
out.
voice did? That means it's time to go. That's Tracy. He gave me a signal. He's like, okay, get out of my hangar.
Absolutely right.
You guys take care. God bless Tracy.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
Take care.
Thank you.